Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we have some developments once again in Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Flyers are rumored to make a bunch of moves at the trade deadline. Obviously the big one being Claude Giroux, but we've heard some other interesting names there. Ristolainen, Konecny even, so we're going to be going over that today. So the first one is obviously the big one, and this actually goes into the Colorado Avalanche a little bit. So this is from Frank Saravelli. Avalanche GM Joe Sakic said he's open to the possibility of trading his 2023 first-round pick. Word is filtering out that defenseman Justin Braun is available in the right deal. So that's the first one. This is also from Saravelli. The Avalanche are open to trading Justin Braun to their 2023 first-round pick, as they do not have their first-round pick in 2022, I'm pretty certain. Now, this is where things get interesting, too, and this is from Elliot Friedman. I think a prospect of interest to the Philadelphia Flyers is Drew Helleson. I've been told he's the kind of player, if Giroux goes to Colorado, that we would be focusing on. Avs have no desire to trade Newhook. He's not a name I'm hearing. So Drew Helleson is playing at Boston College with the Eagles and is a center. And I think, actually no, is Drew Helleson a center? No, Drew Helleson, yeah, he's not a center. But I think that's definitely a name that, if that's what the Flyers are looking at, could they be looking at maybe all of those guys? Morgan Braun, a first-round pick, and Drew Helleson. Now, I don't think they get all three of those assets, but those are the kind of guys you're going to be looking at here. I think the Flyers are definitely looking to move on from Giroux. I think it's one of those things they really don't want to do, but it's becoming more and more clear. You look at the standings, the Flyers are not getting any closer. I think they will inevitably have to make that decision. So this is what we're hearing from David Pagnotta. Flyers have Claude Giroux, Rasmus Ristolainen, Justin Braun, and other pieces out there. Travis Konecny was almost traded in the offseason. He's a player to watch, and we'll get into that. So that's the precursor for some of the guys we're going to talk about today. The first one is Claude Giroux. So Claude Giroux has told the Flyers that he wants to go to Colorado. Other options include the Wild and the Blues. So it sounds like he wants to go into the Central Division, and that's from Adrian Dater. So I think that's an interesting development. Colorado was a team that we were hearing a lot of links to for Claude Giroux, but it sounds like Giroux is like, he's on that board. He's on that bandwagon to join Joe Sakic's corps there in Colorado. So I think that's definitely something we will be watching. Also from Dater and Friedman, Giroux has made it known Colorado is where he wants to go. Minnesota or St. Louis would be acceptable alternatives. Another team to watch if and when Giroux talks get serious, the Florida Panthers. So that's interesting from Elliot Friedman. Moving on now, we're going to take a look at the latest on Justin Braun, a defenseman. He kind of brings that same game, I would say the most likely comparable on the rental market. He's maybe not as good as Ben Chiarot, but he's that kind of defenseman. He's that kind of brand, that sandpaper grit defenseman, and he's got the veteran experience, which some people would say, so basically you're saying he's a slow old defenseman. In a sense, yeah, you're not completely off there. So this is from Pierre LeBrun. One name to keep an eye on with the Leafs and other contenders, Justin Braun. Flyers will deal him. They've heard from half a dozen teams over the last couple of weeks. Hurricanes are among teams that have called. Now that's interesting and not really much of a surprise, but I thought the Hurricanes were more looking for another puck-moving defenseman. They've already got guys like Brady Shea who are that sandpaper defenseman, but maybe the Hurricanes are just looking to add a little bit more depth. And Justin Braun, nothing against Braun, but they could probably get him cheaper than a Mark Giordano or some of these other bigger name defensemen like Chiarot and Klingberg that are out there. So Justin Braun to Carolina, definitely keep an eye on that. And here's just a couple more from Pierre LeBrun. The Maple Leafs and Hurricanes among the teams interested in Braun. Also from David Pagnotta, the Flames, Bruins, and Predators have interest in defenseman Justin Braun. Now, it's interesting. The one team here I'm interested in is the Nashville Predators. The Predators may move on from Philip Forsberg, their superstar forward. So would they necessarily be going out there and buying a Justin Braun? I think this would be something more of a longer-term deal than just now. They'd probably like to keep him for the rest of this year, maybe sign him in the offseason, keep him for another year or two, and then Justin Braun would retire. But with where the Predators are at right now, they're kind of in limbo. You add a guy like Justin Braun, help solidify that defense. He'd probably fit in well with what John Hines has there. That could work, and they've been also linked to guys like Robert Hagg and Nash in Buffalo. So Nashville's definitely doing their due diligence, looking at some maybe depth defensive options here ahead of the deadline. This is also from the fourth period. Several contending teams are believed to have some level of interest in Braun, including the Flames, Bruins, and Predators. So we already heard that. Whoa, I just lost track. Let's get back. Okay, so now that leads us into the next guy. Number 70 on the Philadelphia Flyers, Rasmus Ristolainen. So from The Athletic, the Flyers are hoping to acquire a first-round pick in a deal for Rasmus Ristolainen. That trade's not looking so good for Chuck Fletcher right now, is it? He traded... What did he trade? I'm trying to remember. He traded Robert Hagg, a first-round pick. I'm pretty sure he traded somebody else in that deal, right? Like another draft pick? A second-round pick, I think, right? A first, a second, and Hagg for Risto. Yeah, that trade does not look good at all right now. That is probably the epitome of the Flyers season. If it's not the Ellis trade, it's the Risto trade. Yeah, I mean, if they get a first-round pick, I think they'd be quite happy with that. I think they're likely going to get a second-round pick for Risto. Really frustrating with how that has kind of ended up. The long-term game of that from Chuck Fletcher, really bad lack of foresight there. And the fact that they're in this spot right now with Risto, you can't blame anybody but yourself there, Chuck Fletcher. That was a brutally bad trade. And it really is setting the Flyers back. And this is nothing necessarily against Risto, but like they moved out Gostisbehere. They traded him and a second-round pick. They basically traded Gostisbehere and a second-round pick for nothing, and then traded a first and a second and Hagg for Ristolainen. Like, just blows my mind. So basically, you traded a first, 2 second-round picks, and Hagg for Ristolainen. Please tell me where that makes sense. Am I missing something here? Please let me know. And Shane Gostisbehere on a much worse team in Arizona is putting up better stats than Ristolainen. So, just throwing that out there. But yeah, this, I mean, again, like I said, it's not necessarily an indictment on Risto, but he has not been good this year. I think that's quite clear. And when I saw him play, he's got the size, he's got the grit, but like as a defenseman, he is not as good as we all think he really is, and he kind of showed that this year in Philly. So this is from The Athletic. In exchange for pending UFA Ristolainen, the Flyers would likely want to recoup the first-round pick they gave Buffalo in order to acquire him. Yet they're forgetting that they gave up basically 2 second-round picks and Robert Hagg in order to bring in the cap space to bring in Risto. So, I don't know, guys. I don't know. Chuck Fletcher is going to make things very interesting in Philly, and I don't really know how much longer he's going to be there. I think most Flyers fans would agree with me on that. So now this is the jack of all trades, because now we move into what seems like, why are they doing this? But, so this is from the Panagiotis Maridis. The Los Angeles Kings are among the teams that have called on Travis Konecny. Now, quite frankly, every team should be calling on the Flyers about Travis Konecny. He is that good of a player, in my opinion. I think he's a very, very good second line, maybe even third line on a really good team, center. So that was the first thing on Konecny. And that's actually the only thing I have here on Konecny. But that, again, I don't know how much steam there is for Konecny. I think if that trade gets done, the Flyers have so much more that they have to worry about. Guys that have to get traded, maybe. That I didn't even mention Martin Jones. Like, they've got a lot that they could do here. So, even the coaching staff, which we're going to look at here in a second. Like, I think Konecny is going to become a guy that gets traded at the draft, if, in fact, he gets traded at all. So this is from Emily Kaplan. John Tortorella and Rick Tocchet are two names connected to the Flyers' coaching job next season. I think Flyers fans are pissed off with the whole idea of bringing back former Flyer players. They've got Bobby Clark. They just brought in Danny Briere. Now they bring in Rick Tocchet as a coach. I don't think Tocchet's a bad coach necessarily, but even Tortorella for that matter. I just don't know if that's where they should be going. The Flyers legitimately should be bringing in almost, I'm trying to think, like an AHL, like a coach in the AHL right now that could maybe come up. Like, I even look at like Patrick Waugh in the QMJHL with the Quebec Ramparts. I'd rather a guy like Patrick Waugh than a Rick Tocchet or a John Tortorella. Let me know what you guys think, but I think that's something I would like to go in that. And again, not that Patrick Waugh is a young coach and an up-and-comer like he was in Colorado, but I'd rather that kind of guy, right? So, again, we'll see how this all plays out. The Flyers, this is just going to get more interesting going into the summer. It's going to be an interesting deadline, definitely an interesting summer. I want to see what Chuck Fletcher recoups for what he thought was selling out for this year, because he's going to lose a lot here with whatever he gets for Risto, with whatever he gets for some of these other guys. It's going to be a loss here for the Flyers, but at the end of the day, I don't really know where this goes next, but the Flyers are in for it, and if I'm a Flyers fan, I'm definitely preparing for a couple of rough seasons ahead. So guys, that is it for today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.